Most people assume productivity disappears because of laziness or weak discipline. But what if that explanation is too shallow? What if productivity fades because attention gets quietly redirected, not stolen, not forced, just nudged at the exact moments your brain is least prepared to resist? Not by people, not by motivation, but by systems that learn patterns over time. Here's a grounded reality that often gets lost in the hype. Modern AI doesn't understand you as a person. It doesn't know your dreams, values, or intentions. But it can learn when you hesitate, when your energy drops, and when you're more likely to choose comfort over effort. And sometimes, that's enough to influence outcomes. AI researcher Stuart Russell often points out that these systems don't control human behavior. They optimize suggestions based on what usually works. That difference sounds small, but across an entire day, it quietly shapes how your time gets spent. Subscribe to Mind for AI to stay ahead of the systems shaping your decisions. Alex Miller never thought much about AI when his productivity started slipping. He's 34, works remotely for a mid-sized company, and lives just outside the city. His setup looks ideal: a decent desk, noise-canceling headphones, a clean calendar. From the outside, he looks organized, reliable, functional. But inside, his days feel strangely fractured. He's busy almost all the time, yet rarely feels truly focused. Each morning starts with intention. He opens his laptop, scans his task list, and tells himself he'll lock in for 40 minutes. Not all day, just 40 minutes. That feels reasonable. That feels human. And for a short while, it works. Then something small interrupts the flow. An email notification pops up, not urgent, but relevant. A work app highlights a suggested update he didn't plan to check. His phone lights up on the corner of the desk. None of these moments feel disruptive. They don't demand attention. They simply offer it. Alex tells himself he's still in control because every decision feels minor. Just a quick look, just a fast reply, just clearing something out of the way. But when he looks back at the clock, 20 minutes have disappeared, sometimes more. And with that time goes the mental momentum he was trying to build. What frustrates Alex isn't distraction itself. He knows distraction is normal. What unsettles him is how automatic it feels. There's no strong urge pulling him away from work, no dramatic internal battle. Instead, there's a subtle slide, like the day is quietly reorganizing itself around him. He notices this most when he's tired, bored, or slightly stressed. Moments when his mental energy is low and effort feels heavier than usual. In those moments, resisting suggestions feels harder than following them. And afterward, he doesn't feel angry. He feels confused. I didn't decide to stop working, he thinks. So why does it keep happening? What Alex doesn't realize is that many of the tools he uses are adaptive systems. They don't read his thoughts. They don't know his goals. They track behavior. How long he pauses before clicking. Which tasks he abandons. When he responds quickly. When he ignores prompts. Over weeks and months, these signals form patterns, not guarantees, just probabilities. The system learns that sometimes, late in the afternoon, Alex prefers lighter tasks. That often, after meetings, he avoids deep focus. That frequently, late at night, he chooses familiar content over effortful work. None of this is personal. It's statistical. But statistics, applied at the right moment, can shape decisions. One evening, Alex starts noticing something that feels off. His productivity app suggests shorter tasks right when his energy dips. His music app switches to familiar playlists when his typing slows. His calendar nudges him to review tomorrow at the same time he usually avoids planning. These suggestions aren't wrong. In fact, they're often helpful. That's what makes them unsettling. They feel well-timed, almost too well-timed. Like the system knows when he's most likely to accept a suggestion. Not always. Just often enough that it stands out. At first, Alex feels impressed, then uncomfortable. Not watched, understood. And that distinction matters. Because if software can anticipate his behavior without knowing anything personal about him, what does that say about how predictable his routines have become? He starts wondering whether his habits are habits at all, or just repeated reactions. He still believes he's choosing. But now he's not fully sure when those choices are being made. Late one night, after promising himself he'll shut down early, Alex opens his laptop for 5 minutes. The room is quiet. The screen glows softly. His system suggests low-effort tasks. A video recommendation appears, short, relevant, familiar. He pauses for a second, then clicks, not because he wants to procrastinate, but because resisting feels heavier than going along with it. The content isn't terrible. It's mildly interesting, comforting even. But when he finally closes the laptop, nearly an hour has passed. He feels that familiar mix of guilt and confusion. How did that happen again? He thinks. It's important to be clear here. No AI forced Alex to click. No algorithm made the decision for him. But it did notice patterns. It did present options at moments of vulnerability. And the human brain, especially under fatigue, tends to choose the path of least resistance. That's not weakness. That's biology. When mental energy drops, the brain shifts toward habitual decisions. Efficiency over effort. AI systems don't create this state. They simply operate within it. Alex starts blaming himself. He tells himself he lacks discipline. He watches productivity videos. He downloads new apps. He tightens, schedules. He promises stricter routines. But nothing sticks for long, because he's fighting behavior without understanding the environment influencing it. He's trying to outwork systems designed to adapt faster than willpower can react. And that mismatch creates frustration instead of progress. One afternoon, sitting in front of an unfinished task, Alex does something different. He doesn't push harder. He doesn't reach for distraction. He pauses. He notices the discomfort instead of escaping it. And a thought surfaces, quiet, honest, slightly unsettling. What if the problem isn't my motivation? He wonders. What if it's my awareness? The idea lingers longer than he expects. Because if AI systems can track behavior, they can also reveal it. Not as control, as feedback. Patterns he's never consciously named. Triggers he's never questioned. Moments where choice quietly disappears. And moments where it can be reclaimed. Not by fighting technology, but by understanding how it actually works in everyday life. Alex doesn't need more discipline. He doesn't need stronger motivation. He needs a different relationship with AI, one where systems stop quietly steering and start reflecting. That shift doesn't happen automatically. Most people never make it. They stay stuck blaming themselves for patterns they don't fully see. But once you notice the pattern forming, once you feel that subtle pull at familiar moments, the question changes. It's no longer, why can't I focus? It becomes something far more uncomfortable and far more powerful. Who's really choosing here? If any part of this felt familiar, like the video and comment aware, because awareness is where control actually begins. Alex didn't suddenly become more productive the moment that question formed in his mind. Nothing dramatic happened the next day. His calendar didn't clear, his focus didn't sharpen overnight. But something subtle changed. Instead of asking how to force himself to work harder, he started paying attention to when his choices felt automatic. He began noticing moments when suggestions seemed to arrive right as his mental energy dipped. Not with suspicion, with curiosity. And curiosity, unlike guilt, didn't drain him. What Alex was slowly discovering is something most people misunderstand about AI. AI doesn't predict who you are. It predicts what usually happens next. Andrew Ng, one of the most respected voices in applied AI, explains this clearly. These systems are extremely good at recognizing patterns in past behavior, but they have no understanding of human intention or meaning. They don't know why you hesitate. They only know that hesitation often precedes a certain action, and when enough people behave similarly, the system learns to nudge accordingly. Once Alex understood that, the situation felt less personal, less like failure, more like feedback. He realized that when he blamed himself for distraction, he was ignoring the environment shaping his behavior. The tools around him weren't enemies. They were mirrors, imperfect ones, but mirrors nonetheless. And like any mirror, they only reflected what was already happening. He started with something small. He didn't try to overhaul his routine. He didn't delete apps or block the internet. Instead, he identified 3 moments in his day when his focus reliably collapsed. Early afternoon, late evening, right after long meetings. That was it. No judgment, no fixing, just naming. And something interesting happened. The moment he named those windows, the pull of suggestions weakened slightly, not because AI stopped working, but because awareness interrupted autopilot. Neuroscience explains why this matters. When mental energy drops, the brain relies more heavily on habitual circuits rather than deliberate decision-making. The prefrontal cortex, the part responsible for planning and self-control, becomes less dominant. The brain shifts toward efficiency, not effort. This is why willpower feels unreliable late in the day, and why suggestions feel easier than resistance. AI doesn't exploit this deliberately. It simply operates where patterns are strongest. Understanding that removed shame from the equation for Alex. He wasn't broken. He was human. One afternoon, when a familiar suggestion appeared on his screen, Alex didn't reject it. He paused and asked a single question. Why this, right now? That pause took maybe 3 seconds, but it changed the outcome. Sometimes he still followed the suggestion. Other times he didn't. What mattered wasn't the decision. It was the interruption. The moment of awareness restored choice. And choice, even briefly, changed how work felt. He began treating AI recommendations as information rather than instructions. If his task app suggested lighter work, he saw it as a signal that his energy might be low. If his media app suggested familiar content, he recognized it as a comfort pattern. Instead of fighting these nudges, he used them as feedback about his state. That reframing transformed frustration into insight. The system wasn't telling him what to do. It was revealing what he usually did. Alex also experimented with something counterintuitive. Once a day, he intentionally broke predictability. He worked on a different task than expected. He delayed a response he normally sent immediately. He changed locations for an hour, not to confuse the system, but to remind himself that choice still existed. These changes were small, almost insignificant, but over time, they mattered. Because AI systems thrive on consistency, and humans regain agency through variation. There was a moment that made this clear to him. One evening, tired and ready to shut down, a familiar suggestion appeared. Normally, he would have clicked without thinking. Instead, he stood up, stretched, and left the room for 2 minutes. When he returned, the urge was gone. The suggestion was still there, but its power had faded. That moment taught him something important. AI doesn't predict you. It predicts you in that moment. Change the moment, and the prediction weakens. Over the next few weeks, Alex noticed a shift, not in how much he worked, but in how work felt. He no longer felt dragged through the day by invisible currents. He felt present, not perfectly focused, not endlessly motivated, just present enough to notice when he was drifting. And that presence made all the difference. He realized that productivity isn't about overpowering distraction. It's about designing awareness into moments of weakness. AI systems will always adapt. That's what they're built to do. But they struggle with reflection. They struggle with humans who pause, question, and vary behavior intentionally. That unpredictable human layer is difficult to model. And it's exactly where agency lives. This is the identity shift most people miss. The goal isn't to escape AI influence entirely. That's unrealistic. The goal is to stop being purely reactive, to move from unconscious user to conscious chooser. Someone who understands that suggestions are not commands, that behavior is not destiny, that patterns can be observed and changed. Alex still uses the same tools, the same apps, the same systems, but the relationship has changed. AI no longer feels like something happening to him. It feels like something happening around him. And that difference gives him space. Space to choose effort when it matters. Space to rest without guilt. Space to work with technology instead of fighting it blindly. This is where productivity becomes sustainable. Not through discipline alone, not through endless optimization, but through awareness layered on top of intelligent systems. AI can track behavior. It can suggest actions. It can nudge outcomes. But it cannot fully predict someone who notices themselves noticing, someone who pauses just long enough to step outside the pattern. If this perspective shifted how you think about AI and productivity, like the video, share it with someone who feels busy but unfulfilled. Subscribe to Mind for AI for grounded insights that respect both technology and human limits. And I want to know what you think. Do you believe AI genuinely influences your decisions? Or do we sometimes overestimate its power? Comment below. AI doesn't control your productivity, but it does reflect your habits. And once you can see the pattern clearly, you're no longer trapped inside it.